everyone. My name is Iwona Filipiak. I'm a real estate advisor with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services, Chicago. And today we're joined by Steve Rakowski from LSR Family Law Group. Steve is a 2021 super lawyer, and he's also featured on the Attorneys Who's Who's list. Steve is also a chairman of Paternity Subcommittee of ISBA Family Law Council, and an author of many articles regarding mostly family law, and the most recent about pet issues within the divorce situation. Steve, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you. And today I would like to focus on strictly real estate. We know that in divorce situation, most of the time there's real estate involved. So I know that you both handle residential and commercial real estate. So let's start with the residential real estate within a divorce situation. Can you tell us maybe a background story or some sort of your most memorable story as far as the residential real estate and the divorce law?
Right. So one of the issues oftentimes in these situations is one of the spouses wants to keep the house and one of the spouses does not, or is less interested in that. And so a lot of times that sets up a valuation dispute. The spouse who wants to get rid of it has a high value motivation, and the spouse who wants to keep it has a very low value motivation. So oftentimes we utilize the assistance of appraisers to come in and value that property, and there are unique strategies to employ to help resolve those disputes. One of the classic ways is called the push-pull. So if one of the spouses says it's worth $1 million and the other spouse says it's worth $500,000, we say to the spouse who wants to value it at the higher number, great, you give us half of that then. Because if that's what you're saying the value is, then we'll sell to you our interest to you. You give us half, right? If that's the value, you should be willing to give us half that value. And so that oftentimes helps moderate the difference, bridge the gap between the two valuation differences. And then the appraiser oftentimes will come in. These days, appraisers are more consistent with the values that they're bringing back for their clients, in that maybe a 2 or 3% difference between appraisers on values. So if both spouses get valuations, they're going to see within a couple of percentage points what those values are, and that helps resolve those disputes.
Sometimes, obviously you're able to resolve those disputes, but many of the time, people, at some point need to sell this property to move on. So, from my experience dealing with the divorce situation couple, it gets very, very tricky, because for a real estate broker to represent a family, a husband and a wife in a divorce, you have to be very straightforward with both of them, saying, okay, I represent both of you, but if you want to talk to me separately, I represent you, but I also represent your husband. To the husband, I represent you, but I also represent your wife. However, if there's some information, confidential information, that you would like to provide to me, so I better understand the situation during the sale of this property, then it's very helpful. But these are very complicated, very complicated cases. So tell us a little bit about when the family needs to or must sell the piece of property, and what are the challenges, the biggest challenges that you see in those situations.
Sure. I can appreciate the difficulty that you experience being an agent who represents two people with potentially very competing interests. Real estate attorneys find that they're in a very similar situation as that. But in the divorce context, trying to figure out how to get that property sold is less an exercise in force than it is an exercise in developing trust and cooperation. So one of the strategies I employ to help people decide, first of all, how to market the property is the selection of a real estate agent. That is a very important first step. And sometimes each of the parties knows a real estate agent and they want that agent to work for them because they have a high level of trust. So what we typically do is, in a situation where there's no agreement on which agent to select, we ask each of them to pick from a list of 3 qualified real estate agents that the attorneys agree are well known in that area. So that's one way of resolving the dispute. The other way is to say to the parties that if you can't decide, then we're going to have to let the court decide. And then neither of you has control. So when you bring in the concept of loss of control and the associated time and expense of having the court make that decision, that oftentimes helps the parties realign, reassess, and come to an agreement on the selection of a real estate agent. The next step then, of course, is how do we develop a value? And once you have a trust established with that real estate agent and the 2 parties, then we oftentimes are able to get the parties to accept the recommendation of the agent, who after all is the expert in this situation on valuation and marketing of that property. So trust is the key feature there. Figuring out how to create non-judgmental, objective ways of selection. That is the way to develop trust between the parties, and agreements result.
Wonderful. Let's jump into commercial real estate. So can you share a story about a situation where you handled a commercial real estate transaction for your clients?
Yes. Commercial deals have their own special circumstances. EPA considerations and whether or not there has been prior contamination on the property, the issue of special zoning requirements that limit what can be done on a property, and especially the issue of how do you value that property, right? Because sometimes there are strategic values or valuation consideration. The old saying is location, location, location when it comes to real estate.
Yes.
That's especially true in commercial situations, absolutely. So an interesting case I had once was when we had to have some excavation done to allow an EPA test to be done. And during the excavation they found Indian artifacts, which shut down the entire project for almost over a year, because the various different entities that are concerned with preserving artifacts and antiquities stalled the whole project.
Oh wow, that's so interesting. How did that end?
They
it
were
took
able,
a long time.
They were able to identify the artifacts as less than useful or valuable, and they lost interest after 6 or 8 months, and then based on the combined determination that these artifacts were not that significant and the pressure brought by me and the other attorney involved in the case helped the government agency involved to back off and allow the transaction to go forward.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for sharing those stories with us today. We appreciate you being here. And for those that are interested in having a consultation with you as far as, residential or commercial properties, can you share your website and your phone number with us?
I would invite potential clients to visit our website. It's lsrfamilylawgroup.com. We have a lot of interesting articles available and questions and answers on that website. And if you would like to call for a consultation or to set up a meeting with me or one of the other attorneys in the firm, feel free to do so at 847-412-9950. And thank you for letting me be with you this morning, Iwona.
Absolutely, Steve. It's my pleasure. Thank you very much. Thanks for watching.